Hey everybody, welcome to Crazy Tech Lab, and I have an awesome bit of hardware in the lab for you guys today. We've got the brand new Raijintek Forkis, need to be careful how you say that, Forkis DDC Ultra. So this thing is super cool because it is a combined pump and water block. So I love these things, not least of all because there aren't that many of them out there. I've looked at the Alphacool Eisbear LT recently, not very powerful, has some compatibility issues once you put fittings on it. I wouldn't really want to run a multi-water block, multi-radiator loop with that thing, but it is pretty compact and also very affordable. Complete other end of the spectrum, we've got the EK Quantum Velocity 2 DDC DRGB or something like that, horrendously long name. Massive, extremely expensive, a bit difficult to fill your loop because I ended up blowing coolant into the inlet port to try and get it to get the thing kind of going in my water cooling loop. So a bit of a pain to deal with. However, very good performance, exceptionally well made. Another issue though that one had is that it is not compatible with both AMD and Intel out of the box. You have to buy one or the other. Not so with the Forkis. This thing is compatible with AMD and Intel out of the box. It's actually smaller than the EK, and it also looks like it is going to be amazing value as well, because we have a price here in Europe of less than 120 euros. Now, if that sticks, it's going to be an incredible value for money, because you're always saving with a combined pump and water block compared to buying separate components. Maybe not quite so much with the EK model, because that was very, very expensive, but when you look at a decent water block, a pump and a reservoir, whether it's a separate pump and reservoir or a combo, that ends up being a huge amount of money. You're probably not looking at much change from $300 or $400 once you've bought all of those things. Now, the fact that this thing is retailing for around 110, 120 euros is very exciting, because you also save money over the fact that you only need one fitting each on the inlet and outlet. Now, if you have, worst case scenario, you have a separate water block, pump and reservoir, that's 6 fittings. Now, fittings are not cheap these days. They cost a couple of bucks each at least. Sometimes they're 10 bucks if you go for some really, really premium ones. So this is going to save you money whichever way you look at it. So the only thing we need to establish today is how easy it is to install, how easy it is to actually fill your loop. There is a fill port on the side as well, and it is also PWM controlled. So we can actually tune down the speed of the DDC pump, which I do regularly with my DDCs anyway, because they just don't need to run at full speed. You don't see any benefit in cooling performance unless you've got like 8 blocks and 4 radiators or something. But your average system doesn't make any sense to run it at full speed. So the fact that this thing is running at slightly lower speeds as standard might mean that we don't really need to do that, but we're going to do some investigating later. So what we will be doing is comparing it to, or I'll be doing a comparison at the end of this video in the conclusion, comparing this to the EK and the Alphacool options. Not that many other options out there. There's one from Barrow and a few other people, but I couldn't get hold of those in time for this video. So we're going to be sort of doing a talking comparison between the two that I have tested. We're going to be building it into this fabulous looking case here, which is the Raijintek Ophion Elite. Now, I'm very familiar with Raijintek Ophions. The orange PC right here is the Ophion Evo, which I watercooled a few years ago. You can see a link to the description, link in the description for that video in the description below. And if you want to see where I've used other combined pumps and water blocks to put them to very, very good use, you can see the other links in my description below. I did an awesome water-cooled build in a Cooler Master NR200P with the EK Quantum Velocity 2 combo and the Alphacool Eisbear LT. I actually water-cooled an NZXT H1 mini-ITX case as well. So some super cool systems that you might want to take a look at if you're interested in these things. So that's it from me. Thanks to Raijintek for sending all this gear over. And the only thing I would like to ask you is to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications. It means a lot to have your support. And also don't forget to like and comment down below as well. I love hearing what your guys' thoughts are on this video, on this product. Are you considering a pump and water block combo? Are you considering this one maybe? I love hearing what you're going to be using it for. And also don't forget to like on this video as well, because liking and commenting just helps punch me through the algorithm and gets me noticed so I can carry on doing these videos. And that's pretty much it. Next, we're going to be doing a quick unboxing, taking a look at it and some side-by-side comparisons. Then we'll be doing the system build and coming to some conclusions at the end. So let's crack on. So here we are with the Forkis DDC Ultra then, and this thing is fairly compact, but it's not quite as small as the Alphacool Eisbear. I'd say it's probably twice as tall as the Alphacool and maybe a centimetre shorter or so than the EK, but we're going to do a side comparison in just a moment. So we've got an outlet down here an outlet port and an inlet, and we also have a fill port. Now the fill port and the inlet are kind of swappable, I guess. They both kind of do the same thing, that coolant kind of goes in. I'm guessing the inlet might be, or the fill port might be sort of specifically designed for an easier filling experience. But if you're desperate and you need a side port for whatever your mini-ITX system demands that you use that port and you can't use this one, for example, it is possible because they basically do the same thing. They're just in different positions. So let's put that down. So underneath we've got the contact plate. And the other thing I need to mention is the power socket here. So we've got a proprietary cable that plugs in down there. And this is powered by SATA and also a PWM cable for speed control. So you get a SATA cable as well, because DDC pumps are pretty powerful. So they would potentially cause problems with your motherboard if you have something with particularly weak power circuitry around the fan headers. So that's why it's powered by the SATA cable. Speed is dictated by the PWM cable down there. So that is pretty much it as far as the actual block goes for now. So Intel components, we've got a backplate and a mounting bracket here as well, and a pack here for the Intel components, obviously LGA 1700 and backwards compatible. AMD, socket AM5, AM4, AM3, all that kind of stuff. The fittings for securing it, just thumb screws, but you do probably need a, I think it's like some sort of star key in there. I'll see if I can find the actual size of the one I used and put it in the instructions or the description, because there was nothing included in the box. So you can probably use a smaller hex key or Allen key in there as well. So that's what you get with the mounting mechanism. Obviously the EK secures from the rear of the motherboard, potentially for a cleaner look, but it is much larger and it is socket specific as well, whereas this thing is compatible with AMD and Intel out of the box. So that is about it for the unboxing. So we're going to have a quick look at the case now. So here we are with the Raijintek Ophion Evo case, and I think this thing looks absolutely beautiful. So it's got sort of remnants of other cases there. Give you two guesses as to what fan pattern that's actually sort of taken from, hint, Fantex. But it's a really, really gorgeous looking case, very, very different to most other cases that I've seen, even the Fantex Shift, obviously, which I'm taking the cues from there. I really like it, actually. It's pretty solidly made. It does sound like it's a bit tinny there, but I can assure you it's really solidly made. You've got an RGB light strip around the bottom there, which is going to be pretty cool. So that's going to look very fancy on your desk, and probably is designed to be sat on your desk. A pretty small footprint as well. I really like the small footprint of towers like this case. Obviously loads of others out there like the NZXT H1 Meshlicious and all that kind of stuff. So we're just going to take the roof off here. So nothing too fancy about that. Removable dust filter and some holes for your front panel, and gonna whip off one of the side panels here. So this is kind of the main side of the case, and we've got the radiator mount here. So there's plenty of other positions in the case where you can potentially mount radiators as well. So probably going to do a full review of this case and look at the other radiator mounting points. But basically, this is where the graphics card is going to sit in there. So probably don't want to have any radiators hanging around there, just because that's where it's going to sit. If you have an air-cooled card, it would be drawing air in through that side panel, so relatively well vented as well. Then the roof, not really an option, because that's where the I/O front panel ports are. This section in here, though, is a little bit more interesting. So if I just whip off this panel here, there's lots and lots of room in here to potentially mount something. So you could potentially screw a radiator in here and have the fans in the inside, or vice versa. You do have the power supply down the bottom here, which is a little bit of a pain. I might have liked to have had that rotated downwards, or at least the option to do that, because then you'd have this whole space basically for having the option of an extra radiator. So we do get some fan mounting points here though. So a 120mm radiator, in addition to the 240 or 280 in the side, is probably pretty attractive. So this is obviously where you'd lose your SSD and hard disk mounts, but I don't really use those anyway with mini-ITX builds. It's all about M.2 for me to save those cables. So that is the Raijintek Ophion Evo. Ophion Elite, should I say. The Evo is the orange one that I'm actually looking at. So this is the Ophion Elite. So it's a pretty cool case. I like it. Looking forward to building a PC in here, and obviously we've got loads more fan mounts in here. So there's lots of options, more options than first meet the eye. So definitely a case I'm going to look forward to working in. Today though, we're just going to stick to a fairly simple liquid cooling loop just to see what the performance is like. So let's crack on. Big thanks go out to ASUS for sending over the fabulous ROG Strix X670 EI gaming, and to AMD for the Ryzen 7 7800X 3D. As promised, here are some side-by-side shots with the EK Quantum Velocity 2 DDC PWM DRGB, and as you can see, it's a fair bit larger, and the Raijintek obviously having the thumb screws and the mounting mechanism exposed, but it does at least give it the ability to house AMD and Intel sockets. So wider, taller, and a lot more expensive with the EK, but once you get it going, the EK did prove to be pretty awesome, but it is a lot more expensive. On having a practice run, I decided to switch around the block so that the ports were actually facing the top end of the motherboard, for the simple reason that this gave me access to the fill port through the side panel, which proved to be a pretty good move. You can fit it above your memory, but you'll need to keep your memory to a bare minimum with very, very small heat sinks. They're the only ones that will sit low enough to allow you to access the fill port, which rises above the memory. Something like a Corsair Dominator or Vengeance memory will be too tall. Our power supply of choice is the MSI MAG AB850 GL PCI Express 5, for the simple reason it includes the 16-pin connector that's native to the power supply to power NVIDIA's latest graphics cards. I would probably go with an SFX power supply if I could do this build again, just because it gives a lot more room for cable tidying and a lot more clearance between the radiator fans and the power supply down at the bottom, and Raijintek does include an SFX adapter mounting plate to mount an SFX PSU in the ATX power slot. The power supply extension cable is neatly routed underneath the front panel, but the rest of the cables, including the actual power cable that connects to a port on top of the PC, are routed out of the top of the rear of the case, which maybe looks a little unsightly compared to having them coming from the bottom. With this particular case, we need to run the tubing as long as possible, allowing us to drop the radiator down and out of the case without draining the loop. So I've done this in a few builds, and it's fairly easy with AIO liquid coolers, but with rigid tubing, it helps to go for fairly thick rubber tubing to prevent those kinks. So the moment of truth, filling up the system, having performed a leak test, and I'm glad to report that the Raijintek Forkis DDC Ultra was very, very easy to fill. This is a simpler loop that I did have with the EK Quantum Velocity 2 block though, but even so here it was a very, very simple and quick procedure to fill the pump gradually with coolant and allow the coolant to get pushed around the loop and eventually bleeding itself of air. I had to refill it once about an hour after I had it up and running, but it's very, very quick and easy to do, so no real problems here other than actually getting access to the fill port. But as you can see here, it aligned up nicely with one of the holes in the side panel, allowing me to just get a screwdriver through to remove and refit it. So what do we make of the Raijintek Forkis DDC Ultra then? Well, I really, really like this thing. I think it's compact, certainly more so than the equivalent EK option. It's very affordable as well, at least in Europe. We have yet to see what the price is like in the US when it actually lands and it's in stock. I'm reluctant to make too many comments on the Amazon pricing at the moment, just because I don't think it was in stock very long, and that stuff tends to be a bit all over the place. Still waiting for a price here in the UK. Hopefully we'll get some distributors here soon, but the price that I can go on is the price that is less than 120 euros for a DDC pump and a water block, and essentially a reservoir as well, because it does have that fill port allowing you to fill the system. So very easy to install as well. You just have to make sure you get the orientation right, and critically, as we found earlier, you need to make sure that you can orientate that fill port so it's accessible. It does clear low profile memory, but if your memory is taller than some of the more basic low profile heatsinks, you may struggle to fill it or at least remove it. And any kind of filling around there, you just want to make sure that you've got a very good view of that fill port to make sure that any dribbles and all that kind of stuff don't make their way down to your motherboard. So everything else is pretty good. I wasn't able to do as much testing as I liked because my Asus motherboard, mini-ITX motherboard, was playing up a little bit, so I couldn't get into Windows. I think I need to clear the CMOS, but I need to strip down the system and have a bit of a play around in there. But what I do want to do is do a proper side-by-side comparison test with the Forkis DDC Ultra and the EK Quantum Velocity 2 DDC ARGB or whatever it's called. Just get us like by like or side-by-side comparison with those two water block and pump combos, and see how they perform against each other in terms of noise and thermals. And for that, I'll need to swap to an Intel system, which this isn't obviously, because I've only got the Intel version of the EK block, and obviously that one is Intel specific, whereas the Forkis is compatible with AMD or Intel out of the box. Just another advantage for it. So I really, really like it. Obviously there are more compact options out there, but if you've got enough headroom above the ports, once you've got angled ports on there, or there's a completely clear area above this thing, then you're laughing. It should be plain sailing. I did have quite a few issues in this case, which does kind of make me think, well, you know, if Raijintek has its flagship mini-ITX case, which is what we've got here, the Ophion Elite, and they've got what is essentially a product, this thing, made primarily for small form factor systems. You would think that the two would be compatible, but unfortunately you can't mount standard fittings along with a full height radiator, well, technically half height radiator, about 30 millimeters, the standard size, and full height fans, just not enough room. So you'd think that they would have made the case wide enough for that, or made this thing small enough to actually fit in Raijintek's own flagship case, but that wasn't an option here. We had to dive down to a slim radiator from another manufacturer in order to get this thing working. So probably wouldn't use this case. I think any kind of narrow tower where things are kind of layered on top of each other is going to be difficult. Obviously, if you've got a sandwich style case, or you've got a standard layout mini-ITX case such as the Cooler Master NR200P with plenty of CPU cooler height clearance, then you should be laughing. So if you compare it with that, this thing is very quiet from what I've seen so far. It's very affordable as well, less than 120 euros here in Europe, which is very, very good for a DDC pump and water block, and technically a reservoir as well. Going to save a huge amount of space, and I really look forward to doing an awesome mini-ITX build with it in the future. So hopefully I can pick out another case that's going to allow me to kit it out with multiple water blocks and radiators, and we can revisit this thing and do some comparisons against the EK block as well. So it's an interesting look at it today. I probably wouldn't call it a full review. I know I did in the title, but I've put it into a system. It performs well in terms of noise. I just couldn't do the extra testing that I needed because I need to swap out to another system and do some extra testing there. So I'll be back very, very soon with that. So don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, most importantly, to my channel, and turn on those notifications because I'll be back very, very soon with that video. So that's it from me today. Thanks for watching. Thanks to Raijintek for sending over these components, and I'll be back very, very soon. Catch you later.